Good morning, my creative friends. Dr. Minette Riordan here. This is Painting in Your PJs live with Minette. Although in the summer I am mostly painting in my t-shirts, just fresh back from a walk around my neighborhood, picked up some beautiful little wildflowers. The sun was bright and shining, and it was great to be outside, but it's toasty, man. It's going to be close to 100 here today and in Loveland, Colorado. And I have two girlfriends coming to visit tomorrow, so I'm super, super excited about that. So it feels like there's a lot of really beautiful things happening. So I spent some time this morning trying to figure out where do I want to go next with Painting in Your PJs live with Minette? And I've had this idea that I've been tossing around. So if you're new to the show, welcome. Painting in Your PJs is all about how do we use art as a creative process for personal growth and self-discovery, and especially as a process for getting underneath the surface of our overthinking, overfull, busy minds, reconnect to the heart and the truth of who we're being on a daily basis. And I love using art journaling as a way to do that. You can see Georgia over here. She's trying to find a place to sit as close as to me as she can possibly get without me letting her be on top of me. And so it got me thinking about, what might feel fun. And so I've been tossing around this idea and wanting to get back to reading this book. I started this book a while ago and I was listening to one of her audios lately. This is How to Be Loving by Danielle Laporte. I've started reading it a while ago. I love it because it's kind of little short snippets and chapters. But the whole thing, good morning, Leslie, is really about, reconnecting to a more authentic version of self love. What does it mean to be loving to ourselves, forgiving to ourselves, loving to others? And so I thought I want to play with this over the next couple of weeks because I'm kind of tossing around the idea of maybe doing an art journaling course based on the concepts in her book. So I thought I'd play here with all of you and give it a try and see what can happen. I'm also going to continue my exploration of working tiny in a little 4x4 journal, which will be interesting to see if I can express some of these concepts in these, smaller formats that I'm used to working in. Again, if you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications so you get notified when I go live. And if you like what I do today, be sure and like the video so we encourage other people to stop and take a look as well. And I'm going to go ahead and change my screen here. So I just randomly opened the book this morning. Again, if you're just joining us, this is How to Be Loving as Your Heart is Breaking Open and Our World is Waking Up by Danielle Laporte. I even love these big painty circles. How could I not? I love circles. And so I randomly opened the book, and the page that I landed on was about this idea of perception and self-identification. And I love how she talks about misidentification is thinking we're just our personality traits and our bodies, our careers, our nationality, our reputation, like all the things we sort of do, as opposed to true identification being I'm pure life energy, divine being, I am soul. And this is not for me, a religious connotation, but just that sense of the interconnectedness of all things. And when we sort of misidentify or over identify with personality, with body, with career, with these outer trappings of identity, this causes suffering in the true sort of Buddhist definition of suffering, right? And so the only thing that can ever really change in our life is to focus on how we perceive ourselves and what we have the immediate power to control. So I'm thinking about these, sort of two versions of self, right? The self that I identify with, right, on a regular basis, and then maybe an expression of my true self. And so again, I'm working in this little journal. I haven't done anything with the cover. I have two of these going. I painted the cover on the other one, but I still don't know what I'm doing with it either. And so it's been kind of a fun little exploration. I've gone back and added some words and more pages. These weren't all done on the recordings, but I've had a lot of fun just kind of working in this little tiny small format, a little more words than usual. I haven't figured out how to get this page to stick in here. I came home with some interesting things. Good morning, Yvonne. I came home with some interesting thing from my mom's house, like these little gold leaves and these little stickers and some old photos and this wire mesh that she used when she used to do a lot of clay work. Yeah, me too, Marion, loving the tiny journal. Good morning. And so that's kind of where I am, and I still have these two pages sitting here that have some paint on them. So I thought I might stay here. So again, the concept I'm going for is kind of this, you know, over identification maybe with my stories of my past. And so I was flipping through a big book of collage images, and this little girl looks so much like I looked as a girl with the short hair and the chubby knees and the big cheeks. I just loved her. And I was drawn to both this, leaf and this cactus and this fortune teller. And this funny cat sticking its tongue out. The only time that I remember getting in big trouble, I stuck my tongue out at my dad behind his back, and my mom saw me and washed my mouth out with soap. I also loved this little Edward Munch's the Scream. So I have some interesting things showing up here. So there's all these different aspects of identity of, who I have kind of always thought that I was, maybe a little bit, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be a fortune teller? And spent a lot of my life really with a pretty prickly heart. With a pretty prickly heart. My heart was pretty protected, even though there might have been some shiny, bright blooms on the exterior. I was pretty armored up in Brene Brown's terminology. And somehow I'm wanting to cut this into a heart shape because it just somehow it reminds me of a heart. So I have all these things kind of floating around in my head about these concepts of identity. I also grabbed, this is one of my favorite resources for collage. And I'm looking for so this is the WeMoon calendar, which, I don't use a written calendar anymore, but I so always end up loving the artwork in here that I buy it. One, to support them. They've been doing this forever and it's full of women's art. So, love this one here. I saw another owl this weekend. I was so excited to see another owl, but intuitively it felt like this for me feels like a representation of that idea of the sort of, I'm love. I am divine energy, right? I am one with everything. So that one feels kind of fun, a little big for my journal. This one is one that I had cut out previously that also feels fun. Love that sort of wise old crone doll. Oh, thank you, Leslie. I have a brain that thinks a lot, that's for sure. Had me wide awake at 3 o'clock this morning. This one's really interesting as well, this idea of closing the circle. So sitting again with this idea of, my perceptions of myself, those sort of outer trappings, as opposed to the sort of inner sense of the divine and that divine connection. Like, this is such a great picture that kind of like, this is how I feel, like connection to nature. I'm always surrounded by animals. I love she's connecting to fireflies. Like, this one to me really pulls me in really beautifully. So I'm going to pull that one out as well. And I'm working in this tiny journal, so I may or may not, right? Like, do multiple pages. Love that gorgeous mandala made out of all kinds of interesting nature images. So I pretty much am drawn to every picture in here. This is probably a good time of year to find some of these books on sale. These calendars, as we're past the sort of halfway mark. So if you're interested in some more spiritual art or art that was all created by women, highly recommend this. Plus, it has really nice small images in it as well. So again, that's the WeMoon calendar, and they have a great story as well. All right, so I have some really random things here right now. It doesn't really feel like any of this stuff is going together, but somehow I want to start with this sweet little girl. And I did find my fussy cutting scissors, of course. So I'm going to do some fussy cutting. And if you joined a little bit late, one of the things I shared at the beginning is my sense of where I'm going to go next over I think maybe even the rest of July, is to be inspired and use not Brene Brown. I was thinking I was going to go back to Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, and it just wasn't calling to me this morning, but I've had this idea in mind to do some sort of art journaling project with Danielle Laporte's book, How to Be Loving. It's a really, really beautiful book. I always really enjoy her writing. Love her book, The Desire Map. And it just, it was one of those ideas that just sort of popped into my head one day. And I went back and listened to a couple of her interviews, and I thought, okay, this would be a great book. I want to be inspired to finish reading the book that I had started but hadn't finished. And so I randomly opened the book to a page. Hi, Blanca. And it was all about this question of identity. And it's so interesting because so much of my work over the last couple of years with my private clients, whether they're on the business coaching side or on the sort of creative life coaching side, has really dealt with this issue of identity, and that we seem to reach multiple states and points in our lives where we're looking in the mirror going, I don't know who I am anymore. And midlife is a big one, right? As our kids, if we have kids, are growing up and leaving, our careers are changing. Sometimes our, relationships are changing, whether they're ending or just evolving into new and different stages. Our bodies are changing. Sleep can be hard to come by, but all these things kind of get mixed up in that sense of who am I now? And I find, I work with a lot of women that are sort of in between that, I'm not ready to be a crone yet, right? But I am feeling in that wise woman space. Yes, who am I now at every significant transition? Exactly. Who am I now at every significant transition? So true. I just loved this silly little cat sticking his tongue out. And I'm just going to enjoy this little bit of fussy cutting here. Again, these are random images. And so when you're kind of working this way with some, intuitive collage bits, to not get caught up in worrying about the story or where the story is going, but to just allow the story to unfold and tell itself. And put this cactus down here, and all of a sudden I'm seeing these saguaro cactus in the background as well. So I think what's going to happen is that I'm going to come in and paint some more cactus over here. And Mr. Munch seems to want to be on this page with the cactus and maybe something else. But I think these are all just these kind of interesting aspects of self that I don't know what they all mean right now. I don't even need to know what they all mean right now. All right. Get some paint going, and I will be here today. I will be here tomorrow. I will not be here on Thursday this week because I am having two of my art besties come to play for a couple of days, and they arrive tomorrow. So I will be taking a few days off to play and gather with them. Although I think we are going to be doing a, I don't know if it's going to be a YouTube live or an Instagram live, but doing something live. My friend Andrea Chebelou has her daily creative practice or living in your journal challenge going on right now. And so since she's going to be here with me, we're going to do something live, she and I and Allie Manning. And I don't know what it is, but she'll tell us when she gets here what it is that she wants us to do. So there will be something fun and live happening late on Friday evening, probably too late for my East Coasters. Well, except for Leslie, because Leslie, I know you're a happy night owl, right? A lot of the time. Okay, I like these cactus. I have a fondness for cactus. And when Brad and I first started dating, probably over 30 years ago now, we decided to take a road trip down Baja, Mexico. And we knew if we could do a road trip together that we would be fine pretty much for the rest of our lives. And we rented a car in Tijuana and drove about halfway down Baja. We didn't have, a ton of time. And it was an amazing trip, but it was part of the drive were through these forests of cactus, so many different types of cactus that I'd never seen before. Many of them were blooming. It was so incredibly beautiful. And I love, love, love the saguaros of New Mexico, and going to the Saguaro National Monument near Tucson is one of my favorite memories. Do you know what the details are, Leslie, for the thing on Friday? I think it's going to be like 8 p.m. our time. And I don't know if she's doing it on her YouTube channel. Like I said, she hasn't shared any details. Just, hey, can we do this Friday night? Whatever it is, I can guarantee you it will be a ton of fun. All right, I got some happy little cactus there. I'm just going to use up some of this paint on the page. And I want to get some more of this blue down here on the page as well. And I know Andrea's challenge is ongoing all month, and she's sharing her daily creative practice in her couple of different journals that she makes and works in. And because it's Andrea, I'm sure it's absolutely awesome and amazing. I had no idea what I was going to do with these two pages. I have looked at them kind of over and over and thought, what am I going to do with these pages? Let's see, get some paper under here. I realize I'm avoiding the edges. But there's something about cactus and personal identification that feels intriguing, and that idea of how is the cactus a metaphor, for how am I being in relationship with others? Where am I being prickly and protected? Where am I allowing others to bloom? Cactus are also, they are haven for many types of animals in the desert, right? So they can be prickly, but they can also provide food and water and homes to so many amazing birds and creatures. Okay, and I'm painting all of this, and because I'm going to go with collage next, I may end up just a lot of it may end up disappearing underneath the collage, but we'll see. It just feels a little bit more complete at the moment. All right, so I'm going to hit this with the dryer, get it really dry. What is everybody else working on today? I know a couple of you got small journals and have been working in small journals. Awesome. Blanca's watching the July challenge. Fabulous. I love it. Oh man, I still ended up getting blue all over that page. Oh well. Okay. It's going to have some blue on it. I can always come back and touch that up with a little gesso in there. I knew that had that paint in there a little bit thickly, and these flowers are still really wet also because I really gobbed that paint on because I wanted it to stand out quite a bit. Let's see, I'm going to blot this side off. Just get any last little bits of paint up there. I'm going to leave those flowers alone because I love the texture on them. And if you're really interested in, learning a variety of mixed media techniques in a more sort of how-to style, Andrea's Watch, Learn, Play community is great for that. So this feels like that prickly, protected part of myself, right? Like those screams often got buried within, behind I'm fine. Like I think the words on here need to say I'm fine. So again, that, those parts of self that we keep hidden. And then there's these sort of, curious, adventurous, more playful parts of self. So all these different, like every page in this journal, in this sweet little small journal, could represent a different part of self. But all of these part feel a little bit like that, misidentification, not the core of who I am, but all those sort of, parts of like, here's who I think I am. I mean, even this fortune teller one feels like this sort of interesting, you know, sort of belief in the external or connection to what's happening in the outer world. And I love it's like a classic fortune teller with the crystal ball. And I, been always fascinated. Like it's a story. I think about this and I think of stories of Aladdin and the genie in the bottle. And that what part of me thinks that life is predictable, right? Like that, someone outside of me is going to tell me what's happening. You're putting wheels on every piece of furniture in your studio. Fantastic. I love that. I love having things on wheels. I have two carts beside me that are both on wheels, and I love being able to easily move things around the studio. So again, all these aspects of self are kind of fascinating, right? You know, sort of this youthful, more adventurous, more curious, then something happens along the journey where, you know, those inner screams are kind of hidden behind this very, very prickly exterior. All right, so I'm going to get these pieces down, and working small, we can allow these stories to unfold quickly, right? We don't need to spend a lot of time overthinking things. And you know, I think that's the secret to intuitive art making is learning to work quickly. When you start to overthink it, it's no longer intuitive or coming from your unconscious, it's coming from your head, which is overthinking all the details. And then it gives also, you know, time and opportunity for that inner critic to rear its ugly head. All right, Mr. Munch. And there's an interesting contradiction between this screaming character and these beautiful blooming cactus, right? So there's some false appearances happening here. And remember, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, I did a video on how to interpret your intuitive collages. So if you're new here watching me do this, you might consider once you've created your mini collage to go back and spend some time journaling with it. So I'm feeling like I want this sort of flower theme maybe to continue over here a little bit. And I'm going to come back to my, oh, I have piles of collage paper flowing everywhere. Come back over here to the giant collage book and see if we've got some smaller flowers in here. The fruit's kind of pretty too. Mushrooms, love me some mushrooms. Mushrooms are kind of like lotus flowers, like they grow out of everything, so they always really fascinate me as well. I know there were more flowers in there. I don't know this, I don't know if these are flowers or fungus. There's beautiful sunflowers blooming everywhere here. I was taking lots of flower pictures on my walk this morning. And maybe I need to, nope, I don't want the cactus on the other page. So somehow it just needs like I'm seeing in my head just a little yellow flower here on the bottom, right? And that flower blooming, that sense of sort of, you know, who is it that I was becoming at that age and stage? And I'm someone who likes to spend a lot of time in deep reflection, but also in play. Like, not every time we sit down to make art does it need to be deep reflection. And sometimes, even when we sit down to play, magical things emerge, right? So I've always been someone who really just loved to kind of dive right in. So I'm kind of liking this picture of this woman diving right in. I've always been a pretty comfortable risk taker. All right, so it needed this sort of little bit of yellow here to balance out this other page. It almost feels like it needs a little bit of that blue over here. Again, I wasn't thinking about color palettes, right, Georgia? You're getting all tangled up in my microphone. Sorry, guys. Get. Um, now I lost my train of thought thanks to the cat. I love that, Blanca. Yeah, I think there's different versions of the book out there, probably different editions. And again, I think it's the how you combine the images in new ways that makes the difference. And so I'm wondering if this little diver is going to be diving right into our little prickly cactus. So again, this feels like half the story, half the equation, things that sort of have led to different stages of that misidentification, identifying with the external over the internal truth. Okay, I don't want to lose. I got sticky fingers from the glue stick, all my little painty flowers there. So maybe she can just go between. Now I got yellow paint everywhere. Yvonne, what about the color palette? Was there a first part of that that I missed somewhere? So it's interesting how the color palette just sort of emerged out of all of this without any real intentionality behind it. My glue stick is dirty. Where'd my blue paint go? I think even the color palette feels a little nostalgic, right? Like the sort of old, muted, soft colors. They're not brights and neons. Oh, that's what I was saying before the kitty was the color palette. Thank you. Clearly, my brain isn't functioning this morning. Being awake at 3 o'clock did not do me any big favors. So when I started just randomly flipping through the book and cutting out images, I wasn't thinking about color palettes. I wasn't thinking about, what was already down on this page. I had put some leftover paint on the pages, so was wanting to just use up what was there, but it ended up being the perfect foil for what was to come next here. All right. So that feels better. It feels cohesive, kind of like they're all sort of flowing together onto the page. And this is going to have to get nice and dry before I move on to the next page. I don't know if the dryer is going to be able to get those flowers quite so dry. But there's definitely a story unfolding just in these tiny little bits of collage that I'm finding kind of interesting and curious and wondering where am I going with this? I'm wondering if this needs a little bit of this red over here in the corner. Let's see. Nope, I want to fold it this way. I want to cut a heart out of this. It feels like that's what's missing on here is just this. So another example of, taking the images and just really sort of making them our own. It's too big. And this feels maybe like it's going to have a written hidden word on the back side of the heart. I don't know what that might be yet. So it feels a little bit like hope and possibility. It makes me happy that now I have the red in a few different places on the image as well. Almost want something, maybe this is what's bringing the two pages together here. This is the fun, the sort of fussy fiddling of, what are those last little remaining bits that are going to sort of bring everything together. Are they paint? Are they marks? I'm thinking maybe this needs just a few little red marks. And so if I put this here, then I can write a little secret message on the back there or underneath here. So it only needs to get taped down on that one side there. All right. So it needs something, something here, something, something, something. Not, and that's funny, that one is so glary. Maybe one of those funny mushrooms. Like there's a sense of like sort of the blooming and the softening, and then the heart is in between, but at some point, right, like there's this diving into the center of the thorny bits to be able to release whatever's happening in the background. So definitely a lot of things happening. So maybe this is going to be some words or a phrase or something that wants to emerge. I have a few different boxes and envelopes of words floating around. This does not feel like freedom. This one just popped out right on the top. If you never try, you will never know, which feels like it kind of goes with her and also goes with this idea of like having to open ourselves up and allow some of the screams out, let intimacy and love in. And there's one that's completely related to our theme for the day. What do we want to be? What are we? What are our values? How do we want to think, feel, talk, act? I didn't know, right? I didn't know at this age and stage, or maybe I often turned to others, or maybe I dove without looking. So that's a great question. Dreams, we've got create. Oh, roots is really interesting. Definitely some information about roots, but the word and the color doesn't match. Actually, this one feels really good. Finding beauty everywhere, because that's a big part of what that journey of inner exploration is all about, finding the beauty everywhere, especially within instead of without. So that one actually feels pretty good on there. Okay. So let's see what we want to do with these words. I'm going to cut them apart. So tomorrow's collage will be the second half of the story about that sort of, true identification of self. And I imagine it's going to look quite a bit different than today's collage. And that beauty might be just a little bit hidden there. So when I am prepping collage materials, so if I'm, doing something closer to journey circles or soul collage, I don't use words. But this little book has really just been calling for words. All right, I'm thinking maybe it's just finding beauty. And I'm going to save that other everywhere for something else. I love that these colors totally match. I don't know how I managed to get so much paint on my glue stick. And this definitely, like, I love that, she's walking, there's the fortune teller. We just rewatched one of the Huntsman movies with Chad Hemsworth and Charlize Theron, and about the mirror, mirror on the wall, and finding true love. I love all those kind of fantasies, right? But they can all simply be metaphors for how are we finding that beauty within. But it still needs that one little touch of red over here in the corner. So I'm finding my own process really fascinating as I'm going along and finding these tiny collages almost more challenging than a bigger one where I have a little more space, like it has a lot more bits and pieces and parts, but I also think, it's part of the visual storytelling is just, like what needs to be on the page in order to reveal the story, right? But there's something here about the theme and the movement and the color palette. Let's see. I'm going to fussy cut this just a little bit more. And I'm not always someone to make a journal and then spend time flipping through that journal again and, looking at the work. Sometimes they get stuck in a box. Sometimes I flip through them and go, meh, and I toss the whole thing away. But something about this little tiny journal is every time, and maybe it's the size, but every time I pick up this little tiny journal, I'm finding myself flipping through the previous pages and just noticing the words and the stories. All right, so there we have, I think, part one of two, Finding Beauty, a little bit of visual storytelling with collage and paint, and about those perceptions of self and how those perceptions of self can often be focused on the external and what other people see, and when our truth is maybe hidden behind a little bit. So tomorrow I want to do something completely different that feels like a more internal expression of self. Not that any of this isn't true. It all feels very true, but maybe not the core of my identity. So lots to still explore and investigate here, but I'm going to go let this dry, and I will see you guys all back here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Mountain Time for part two of this visual storytelling and working with identity. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you indulge in some creative play today, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye, my friends.